Okay, I am so stoked to have you here because I've been following you for a long time, it feels like. I haven't even told you this story, but I'm going to tell a little story that I started following you a long time ago. And it was kind of when my littles were really little. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I love her mindset and I love what she's teaching women to do. And I just felt like very aligned with what you teach. And so when I don't know if you've heard of Dream 100, but you like write down your Dream 100 of people that like are already in front of your ideal audiences. Mm-hmm. And sorry, this is a long story, but I was like, one day I would love to have Tessa Romero on my podcast. No, seriously. And it was like, oh, it will be like way down the road because I need to like grow my podcast, all the things. And then when Marcus, so just for listeners, Tessa's husband, Marcus, met my husband, and then he was like, hey, my wife should be on your wife's podcast. I was like, nah, are you serious? You know? And so just being able to like go to lunch today and hang out and get to know you. I love the way your brain thinks, and I love the way that you are out there making a difference in women's lives. And so I'm so honored that you're here and going to be on the podcast and all the things. So seriously, just wanted to start out by saying thank you so much for driving all the way up here and being here today.
We really are thrilled to be here. I hope you can feel that now, Andrea. It's been so wonderful. And I've just got to say, for listeners and myself and for you, saying I followed you for a long time, the only time it's not awkward is when you're referring to social media.
Oh my gosh. I followed you for so long and creeped on you and know all these weird things about you.
It's never creepy when you're referring to social media, so I always think that's funny. And my husband's truly like biggest supporter, biggest hype man. Like he sees a lot of things before I do, so I'm grateful for that and that they got us connected because I'm like, I'm going to call you tomorrow.
Oh my gosh, you're so cute. No, I love it. I love it. Well, let's start out just by, I'll read your formal introduction so everyone knows a little bit about you. Tessa Romero is a mindset coach for moms, teaching them how to navigate the hurtful thoughts that bring them down and create more helpful thoughts that lift them up, while taking back their power to parent in a way they feel proud of. She is a mother of 4 young boys from 6 to 6 months old and has been adoring her husband of 10 years. She has served thousands of mothers over the last 6 years and created MOMSET as a company to pour her passion into mothers through coaching, courses, and events. She is certified in emotional performance and nervous system regulation and merges together mindset and emotional health to create practical tools and proven strategies for moms to experience sustainable growth and generation impact in their family. She is now shifting her focus onto welcoming mothers into the MOMSET app to experience coaching and personal development in a space of positivity and empowerment. So everyone meet Tessa Romero.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because so often I get to share about the tools, I get to share about the methods and the systems that I've created to help moms have more of these helpful, positive thoughts and feel empowered in their home. And it's pretty rare that I get to talk about the behind the scenes, like the story that's created and brought it up. And I'm really hopeful that this episode will make a deeper impact in the work because a lot of people think, oh, you're just good at mindset, so you must never struggle with these things. Yes. And the reality is I think people with the best perspectives and the best mindsets have actually been through really difficult things. Totally. And we just easily forget that. So when I had the invitation to come here, I was like, sign me up, we will drive, we're coming.
You're the best. Well, let's start off with that because I think that is so valuable. And I love that you set the intention for like what you want to get across. And that is so aligned with Beyond the Boardroom, her story, because we really do want to know the story of you and your brand and how you came to be. So start from the beginning, add whatever details you want to, if you want to tell us quick or if you want to give us all the details, we want to hear it all.
Oh, I'm super excited. And it's interesting. In running a business, I never actually anticipated having a business. And I don't know if anyone else like finds themselves in that place. I used to say like, well, I just kind of like tripped and fell and face planted in this business. And here I am. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like how to be a business owner and how to be a professional and how to be a leader for my team. And taking it all the way back to the beginning, like I always thought my husband was going to be the provider for the family, and I would be the stay-at-home mom. And he was in strength and conditioning, athletics. He played baseball through college. That man just swept me off my feet, and I was like, you're the answer. Yes. You're going to take care of everything for me. And having a hard childhood myself, I was just really looking for like a knight in shining armor.
Totally.
And whether I would have admitted it at the time or not, I knew that's what I wanted. I wanted someone else to just take care of me, like figure these things out. And while my husband does a lot of that, it's really cool to see how, I mean, the way I needed someone to take care of me was not like to financially provide all these things. I'm actually really creative. I have a great work ethic. What I needed was someone to just help me feel safe in an environment. And I've just got to give it to the man. He's always created a safe environment for me. So anyway, going through his career, turns out strength and conditioning is a very low income like producing career until you make it to like huge schools, titles, all the things. And that would pretty much require us to move somewhere further away, which neither one of us was really looking forward to. So several years go by, he's working in this career, and I was nannying at the time, getting my undergrad, and occasionally working another job like to try and earn money. We were actually at the point too where we were renting in like low income housing, and again like making very minimal money. And something that I learned from that I really loved though is we were so happy, like just so happy. We loved our movie marathons on the weekends. We went for daily walks like around this trail that was nearby. We had creative dates because spending money, I mean, that wasn't really an option at the time. So it was more so just like going through a drive-through, getting a hot chocolate that felt so special, and then driving up the mountain only for his car to get stuck.
Oh my gosh.
We had no business driving up the mountain in his car. And it's just like, I think it's just a really special season that I'm forever grateful for, even though like it was really stressful to have lower income. I think it's always just worth evaluating like what can I learn during this season that income is lower that would really serve me when my income's higher. And I think that's just like the connection piece. So he had low income producing. We were super happy. And then I got pregnant with our first son. And like you mentioned, I have 4 kids now. And when I got pregnant with my first son, it was just like something struck me. Like I just want to be with him. Like I just want to be with him so bad. And during my pregnancy, I'd convinced myself like I've got to get a job. There's just no other way for us to like live.
1 + 1 is 2. Like it's not adding up.
Exactly.
Totally.
And it's like, well, 1 + 1 is adding to me getting a job.
Yes. Like this is the only option. Yes.
And so I actually applied. I was graduating in May, and he was going to be born in June. So I started applying for jobs. I applied at the university for a job. I applied for teaching English to online students in China. I applied to that VIP kid. I applied to that.
Oh, I totally remember that.
Yes, and it's so ironic. I actually didn't get that job because I was not animated enough.
Oh my gosh, like, and you're like so
I feel like I'm one of the most animated people I've ever met. So I'm like, okay. Whatever. Everything works out for a reason though, right? You don't know your good breaks from your bad ones. Yeah. And then I got offered the job at the university and at the housing that we lived at for like managing it. And I was like, okay, like I'll take this job because I can do it with my son there. And then he was born, and then like, I don't know, he was probably like 2 weeks old. He actually had really high bilirubin levels. So he had to do like the Billy bed the first few days. And just going through all of that in the first few days, I was like, I'm not leaving him. I'm like, I'm not taking that job. I'm not taking that job. I'm staying with him. And I told my husband, like, I have to stay with him. And I will always remember this. He just said, look, if you can find a way to make $400, then yeah, you can stay you can stay home with him. It would cover our expenses. That's like bare minimum what we need to just keep doing exactly what we've been doing. And there's something about that number that I was like, I can do that.
I can do $400 a month.
I can do $400 a month. And I'm like, sure.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Exactly. I had no idea. Yeah. Exactly. I had no real idea how I was going to make $400 a month. I just knew like I can do it. And I still have this talent, if I'm being honest. My talent at the time was to talk during a workout. People loved to work out with me at the gym. I had friends constantly texting like, hey, Tess, you want to do a workout together?
They're like, she can talk so I don't have to.
Exactly. They're like, you're just so entertaining to work out with. Like, I forget that I'm working out. I forget that I'm doing something hard because you just talk to me the whole time. And I'm like, sounds like a skill.
It's a great skill.
Sounds like a skill. Sounds like a rare skill too. So I actually started working with women one-on-one, and we would do like 30 or 45-minute training sessions, like 3 days a week. And I had 3 clients. They were paying me, I think it was like $12 a session.
Oh my goodness.
And again, this is like a lot of workouts for me to be doing every week, because I would work out with them on FaceTime.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, girl. Yes.
And it was $12 a session. And it just like, it helped me realize like, I really can make the money. I can make the money. Is there a better way to make money? Maybe. I'm with my son though. I'm in my own home. I'm on my own schedule. I can make the money. And then I did that for several months. And then one of my clients, it was such a God thing. One of my clients, her husband was also part of a company that we were a part of. And we met them at a convention we were going to. And the husband said like, gosh, my wife loves working out with you. I was like, I love working out with her. She's so great. And he's like, I just don't understand why you're doing all these one-on-one sessions when you could just run a group and work out with
so much more.
like work out with a group of people for the 1 hour that you're spending with my wife. You could work out with a group. And it literally never occurred to me that I could just be more efficient.
Scale in that way.
Yeah, that I could be efficient. And really efficiency is something that I've always like held on to this idea of I am someone that loves tedious work. I do. Like, I love repetition. I love tedious work. And I think that part of me just like, because I know I enjoy it, it didn't realize the ways that it was actually holding me back from doing something better and more. So I've had to learn that in my entrepreneur journey. Like, Tessa, you can love the tedious task of like drying dishes.
Yes.
Maybe let some other things go.
Be a little bit more,
a little bit more efficient in other areas. So after he lit that idea inside of me, I started a workout community, and I was okay. I'm going to charge $40 a month, and if 10 people join, like, I think that was a key for me in the beginning, is keeping numbers very obtainable to me. Like, I knew for a fact, just with the social media that I had, I think I was starting at like 1,400 followers. It was a personal account. And I just knew, like, if I got on there and said, I'm going to start a workout community, it's $40 a month, come work out with me live 4 days a week, plus 1 live stretch with me every single week. And I keep my word, I keep my commitment. I can get 10 people in that group.
Totally.
Like, I just knew it.
Yeah.
And it just, because I knew it, I approached it, and I was marketing myself as if like, oh, I know you're coming.
It's already decided.
It's already decided you're going to be there, right? Tuesday?
Yes.
And because the numbers, again, were so obtainable. And it turns out that instead of just having 10 people join, we actually had 40 people join at first. So like my $400 goal got blown up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we just made $1,600. Like
a month, every month.
Yes. And it just, like, in the beginning, it was so powerful for me to see, like, just what's possible.
Totally.
Like, break out of this difficulty, this struggle. And believe me, it was difficult, and we were struggling. And all I wanted was to just walk into a freaking grocery store and buy what I wanted. I wanted to buy that flipping bag of cashews so bad. You don't even know. But the bag of cashews was $10.
Yes.
So looking at my grocery budget, it's like, I gotta make more money. I want these cashews. And for me, like, my first goal in business, taking it back to the very beginning, my first business goal was to to stay home with my son. That was the first goal. And my second goal was to not have a grocery budget. And anyone that's like known my story at all knows that is still one thing that is extremely important to me, is to be able to go into a grocery store and buy the groceries that I want. And it drives me. Like
a definition of success.
It's one of the definitions of success for me, is like, I can stay with my kids. I can be there when they need me. I can be there for what I want to be there for. And I can go into the grocery store and buy the freaking cashews.
Yes.
And to me, like, it drives me. Yes. So we went, for 3 years, I showed up live through having babies and everything. I showed up live 5 days a week in my online workout community for 3 years straight. Body by Mommy was the name. So I have work ethic, and I love that, like, I've proven to myself you can make a commitment and stick to it. So I've proven to myself, like, you can set a goal and hit it, and you can make a commitment and stick to it. And then 3 years into that, I was feeling really burnt out. And in the journey, though, it was 9 months into the workout community that I realized the girls working out with me also struggled with a lot of the same mental and emotional things that I had struggled with. Like I mentioned, I had my fair share of difficulty as a child. Like my biological dad passed away when I was 6, and that was extremely difficult. There was no warning of it whatsoever. He just passed away one night. And then you wake up the next morning, and your dad's gone. Your mom doesn't know what to do. Like, he was the provider for our family. So it just like rocked everything for us. And that's a reason for me too why I feel so safe earning an income, is because my mom tried so hard to do everything she could for us. And at the end of the day, she just felt most safe in a relationship with someone else providing or contributing in that and being able to provide. And that created a lot of dangerous situations for us, because you're welcoming in these people that you're dating to your daughter's lives, and you can't necessarily trust all of them. And I think just through that experience, though, through a hardship, I really learned, like, I want to know that if anything were to ever happen to my husband, I could just be with my boys.
Totally.
And I could be with them, and I could just stay me and them. I don't need to be with someone else because I need them to provide for me. I don't need them to figure it out for me like I thought I wanted coming into my marriage. Mm-hmm. It's been really empowering for me to see, like, money is not something that only my husband can earn, and it's not something that's only earned one way. Like, you can solve a problem for people and live the great, big, beautiful life that you really want to live, and put a lot of your fears at ease, because I no longer fear like losing my husband when my oldest son turned 6, which he just turned 6. And that was something I felt really anxious about, like, oh my gosh, he's going to turn 6 and my husband's going to die. Like, I went to so much therapy for that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And the reality is, like, I want my husband to live. I always joke, like, I'm going to live to be 100. He's going to live to be 104 because he's 4 years older than me. And I'm going to die one day before him.
I love that. It's like the Notebook, like both right next to each other.
Yes, I'm like at least a minute before him. I don't care.
Yes. I'm going before. Yes.
And we're both going to live a long life. Yes. And it's just part of my vision. And just understanding, though, like, this is some people might look at money as like, oh, I want to earn a lot of money for XYZ, like the trips, the home, the materialistic side of things. I look at it as like the luxury of being able to just be the mom that I want to be with my boys, and understand it can just be me and them if I want it to be me and them. Yes. If I want to be with someone else, it can be. It just puts that fear at ease for me, though.
Totally.
Like,
yes.
I can live in the moment now. I can be present. I can be available. It's been really great. So I actually started coaching because in that workout community, I noticed, like, the women that I was coaching didn't know who they were. And that's what I would struggle with. And they struggled with shame so bad. And that's what I struggled with. Yes. And they didn't know, like, how to love themselves. They certainly didn't know how to forgive themselves. Those are all things I was struggling with that I had recently overcome going into motherhood. Because I really struggled with anger. I really struggled with negativity just from the trauma of my past. Mm-hmm. Like, my mom's ex-husband had, he had really unhealthy behaviors and tendencies and addictions and pedophilia and pornography. And that was hard to grow up with. And then constantly feeling like my mom was choosing him over us. Mm-hmm. That was hard. Yes. And then losing my dad. So I knew going into motherhood, like, if I want to have a relationship with my son where he wants to be involved with me, he wants to call me, he wants to tell me what's going on in his life, I've got to get my crap figured out. And as hard as that was to face, I knew that the way I was already treating my husband, as much as I adored that man, I was treating him poorly. Like, I was taking things out on him. And I just didn't want to treat my son the same way. And I didn't want my son to one day look at me and be like, oh my God, I don't want anything to do with you. And that's how I was kind of feeling about my mom at the time. And it just was like, oh my gosh, it was like a knife in my heart that was just like twisting and turning anytime I thought about him and I not having a close relationship. So then I decided to buckle down, do my own work. And I'm still doing my own work. And that's actually how I do better at this work, is because I realized I have my own work to do. And that's how I got into mindset work, was realizing, like, these women are struggling with the same things that I've recently overcome. I'm a few steps ahead of them. I don't have it all figured out. I'm just a few steps ahead of them. I can start taking them down this road with me. Since then, I've created 3 courses. I've revamped my courses several times to make them just better to the tools that I've learned. I've gotten certified in emotional performance and nervous system regulation, do my podcast, my coaching, hosting the retreats, like all of that has just continued to unfold by truly just trying to stay a few steps ahead of my community. Like, I like to think of it as like walking out into the unknown before them, figuring out the path and saying, okay, come this way.
Okay, I know that this works. This is great.
Yeah, like really holding myself to it. I really believe that the best way for the work to stay in you is for you to stay in the work. So if you want to learn all this mindset stuff and you do exceptional coaching as well, you know, like if we want our clients to really learn this, they have to commit to living it. And if you commit to living it, then it will just stay in you. You don't forget it. It just becomes who you are. So the development of things, I think, has happened more rapidly in the past like couple of years since letting go of the workout community, letting myself fully transition into coaching, and letting myself realize like choosing to pursue this path and have a bigger vision around like what MOMSET is and what MOMSET can be and the way that I can help other mothers. It's not this selfish desire. And overcoming that belief, now we have the app, and I'm training other coaches onto our team and serving more women that I even thought possible. So it's just really cool how it unfolded, and just the story of the beginning, it's like my favorite. I love knowing that no one handed it to me. I love knowing that I started my social media at 1,400 followers. That was just like personal over the years. Like it just feels good to know you did it yourself.
Totally.
And you can do it again if you ever needed to. So it's kind of the story, the unfolding. I think I got that right.
I love that. No, that was so good. Well, and some key points that I love from that story is that you are like, and just getting to know you today, I think it was at lunch that we were like, it's crazy to think that like the more you know, the more you don't know.
The more you know, the more you know you don't know.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And that I am just so impressed by your willingness to be like, no, I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to figure it out. And I think sometimes as business owners and successful entrepreneurs, people think like, oh, they have it all figured out. And it's like, for everyone listening, you know, typically we're talking to wives of successful entrepreneurs. We all know that like none of us have it figured out.
Oh yeah, our husbands don't have it figured out. We don't have it figured out.
You know. And so I think that's what's so cool about it, that like your journey, you're like, okay, I just need to get to here, like the 400 a month.
Yep.
And then you change that, and sometimes numbers are easy to reach for because you can quantify it. But there's all a version of that, like, oh, I just want to be able to buy the cashews, you know, or I want to have this freedom, or I want to stay home with my children, or I want to look this way or that way.
Maybe something that normally sparks an argument in your marriage. I just want to be able to ask a question, like a genuine question, instead of snap at my spouse.
Totally, yes.
Like having those little benchmarkers for yourself. I thrive with benchmarkers. Totally. If I can just get narrowed in and fixated on like one thing I want to do better, everything around it gets better too.
Oh, I love that.
And it helps me eliminate this overwhelming idea of changing everything all at once. And really just focusing on like, what's the one thing though that I'm doing that doesn't align with who I want to be? And if I just changed that, look how many other things would change too.
It would be like a domino effect. And I think there are these little like screenshots of life that you're like, ooh, I don't like how that feels. And then the next time it comes around, you're like, oh my gosh, I showed up so differently. Like, I think those are the quantifiers that's what really counts. It's like money is nice to be able to.
It's a tool.
It's a tool, right? And to be like, oh, I'm growing in this way. But oftentimes, once you have the money, it's like, what are the other quantifiers that I am growing? And I think it's those screenshots of life that you're like, oh my gosh, I've grown so much because last time I would have responded this way.
Yeah, you know? Like last time I would have skipped my workout.
Totally.
Last time I would have ordered out. Last time I would have yelled at my husband. Last time I would have yelled at my kids or snapped at my kids, sent them time out. And I think exactly what you're saying. It's just amazing to see yourself grow as a person as a whole.
Yes, totally.
And find more things to track that shows you I really am growing.
Totally. Okay, so in that, I was thinking of asking you this later, but I think it fits in right now super well. What, like, a lot of the listeners are wives of successful entrepreneurs, right? So they're in this world, and I would love to know, like, most of them, their main priority is being a mother, being the CEO of the home.
Yep.
What are some, like, useful things that you would recommend that would fit in their world of, like, showing up the mom that they want to, or the wife that they want to, the supporter in building the empire? Like, I know that's kind of a hard question to ask because it could be so many things, but what kind of comes to mind for you in that?
I really love that question. And I think too, just to create like a space of validation, I think for you and I, motherhood really does like remain at the heart of our life, and it's like what we look forward to. And there's just so many things that pursuing business gives us that fuels our motherhood. It's amazing to me how they work together. So I view myself in this same category. Like, what helps me be the CEO of my home? And I like to look at it too, like the way I phrase it is being the heart of the home. Because if any part of the body gets injured, the heart doesn't just stop trying to pump blood to it. The heart actually tries to get more blood over there.
Oh, I love that.
And I think about that like when our kids are struggling. Like, if my kid's struggling, my job and my role is not to become a stray to my child and create distance there and let them just like die off my body.
Yeah. Just chop off the arm, it's fine. You don't need it.
Right? It's the point of watching my child struggle is to pump more efficiently to them. And that's why I love the heart of the home. So maybe that's the first thing I would recommend is get out of this idea that you're the CEO here to manage, control, systemize, streamline, which there's a lot of benefits to it. More so view yourself as the heart of the home. How do you pump to your kids more efficiently, or the areas of your home more efficiently? Like if you're struggling with the clutter and the overwhelm of the home, maybe you need better systems. Looking at it is like, well, how do I function more healthy in my home, just like a heart would? Well, I got to get rid of all of this built up cholesterol, like all this built up plaque, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the clutter.
So, get rid of it.
Exactly. So first, it's the perspective of you're the heart of the home. You're meant to pump even more vigorously and efficiently to the areas that are struggling. Make those your focus. And then another thing that I always focus on is just like who you're believing that you are in this role. Like being a mother is a role. Being a wife is a role, being a homemaker is a role, and it's not enough to just stop at identifying yourself as the role, to say I'm a mom. Okay, well, you're a mom and I'm a mom. What makes us different? Who we believe we are as mothers. So that's really like the biggest thing outside of being the heart of the home. That concept, the biggest thing is to really claim and own who it is that you are in that role, because there's a lot of homemakers, there's a lot of mothers, there's a lot of wives, and you're the only one that's you. So what makes you you? And this is where it can get really negative. Well, I am short-tempered, I am short-fused, I am unorganized, I am overwhelmed, exhausted, angry. They identify as these things thinking it will solve a problem, and the reality is it creates a problem. Because now you're identifying that that's who you are, and that's more of what you're going to do. Yes. Instead of seeing it as like, okay, this is how I feel, and this is who I am. Like, yes, I feel tired, and I am intentional. So what does someone that is intentional do when she feels tired? And it just changes the way that we show up in our relationships, in our environments. And that's like my biggest thing is just you're the heart of the home, and what I am statements are you using? Because they're going to make a huge difference in the way you show up in that role.
Totally. And I love that because I think there are so many times that we qualify or title ourselves as the roles. And I love that you brought that in where it's like, well, you're Tessa and I'm Andrea. And we have all these different roles in our life, but like, who do we want to be?
Yeah.
Have you heard the be, do, have method at all? I don't know if you've heard that.
Oh, man, I don't think so.
But it's like similar to what you're talking about where like, the idea being that you choose who you want to be before you have or do anything, right?
Yes.
So it's just a framework of thinking through that where it's like, well, who do you want to be? And like you can show up as her today.
Nothing
like,
needs to change.
It doesn't have to be like down the road, then you finally prove who you are or whatever. You're just like, if you believe that's who you are and you just decide today, and I believe that's like your God-given like system of like who you actually are, then you're going to show up differently in these situations, and then you'll just be like, oh, I believe that always, and now I have that, and I do these things based on who I know that I am and who I who I be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And we start to view our home as the place that we're meant to thrive in.
Yes.
Rather than the place that's like creating we walk in the door and then we immediately get into our victim mentality.
Yes.
Of, oh, that's out. As if that thing's out just to upset you.
Yes.
Like, no, it's not. That's not what happened. They didn't put their backpack on the ground instead of the hook because they knew it was going to just tick you off. I know.
Totally.
And when we don't keep our mind in check, though, it looks around the home and it says, oh, there's dishes on the counter because nobody wants to help me, and the backpack's on the ground again because my kids never listen, and the trash, of course, didn't get taken down because my husband doesn't care. Like, hold on a second.
Rewind. Yeah.
We're creating a lot of problems in a space that you can feel your absolute best in. I mean,
Totally.
Where else are we supposed to go in life that we're supposed to feel better than we do in our own home?
Yes.
Like, I really believe that the home is the place that you're supposed to feel your best. And what I love about what you're saying, too, about, like, the be, do, have, is even understanding that, like, there's no rules.
Totally.
Like, you're the one actually creating the rules of your home, of your life, of the way you treat yourself.
So powerful.
I remind myself of it every single day. That's been, like, one of my more recent...
I'm in charge.
I made this! I made that up!
Yes.
It seriously blows my mind. Like, I mean, look around. Look how differently people are parenting. And differently they're showing up in their marriages. There are no rules. And it blows my mind every time. I'm like, oh my gosh, I really can be the wife I want to be, the mom I want to be, the entrepreneur I want to be, the coach I want to be, because there's no freaking rule that says I can't.
Yes.
It's just,
I'm an adult.
I know. It's like, it's really mind-blowing to me. Really mind-blowing.
No, I can totally relate to that. I love all those reels that are like, I figured out that essentially I have no rules, but the idea being like, I'm an adult and I get to do whatever I want. And it's like, that's such a fundamental, like, we know that, but like, we don't act that way.
We don't apply it.
That's how we were raised, or that's what we see other people doing. Yeah. But like, I'm picturing The Notebook again when he's like, what do you want? You're like,
it's not that simple.
But like, it really is that simple.
It is that
like,
simple.
You just made it so simple to be like, no, literally, what do you want?
Yes.
You know? So I have a question specific to one thing that I have noticed is a lot of what you talk about, especially on social media, and I'm sure it's same in your coursework, it feels like women need to be relatable to each other or something, and it's like this negativity of like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to, back to the rules, I'm supposed to be like bummed or overwhelmed or annoyed or frustrated as a mom because that's what everyone's talking about. And I remember one time I heard, or maybe I read it in a book, parenting book or something, I can't remember, but they were talking about terrible twos, that like we all talk about like, oh yeah, terrible twos, blah, blah, blah. But like in other countries, that's not a thing. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I learned this before I even had kids, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to choose to not like put that on my child of like, oh, they're in their terrible twos, they show up this way, you know? So this is a long way of saying like, how do you find yourself being strong enough in your circles and on your platform to be like, hey, I don't want to be relatable in that way. I want to show up differently, because that was in your social media what drew me in so much, because I was like, this is different than what I'm hearing everywhere else at church or in friend groups or circles or whatever. Like, you do it so differently because you're like, I'm going to have a different result because I'm choosing to think about this differently, which leads me to feel differently, which leads me to act differently. Exactly. So what's like your brain behind that, and how do you kind of overcome that, or maybe you're currently overcoming that?
Honestly, I think when I first started, I had this really naive idea that a lot of other people thought these common thoughts of our kids being the problem were wrong too. Yes. So I think I honestly went into it with a lot of false courage.
Okay, I love that.
Messy
action. You're like,
it was very messy action. Yeah. I did not know, I did not comprehend that people, the vast majority of people, genuinely believed their child was the problem. Like, it was completely naive. I truly went into it like, why?
I'm the one with the fully developed brain.
Exactly.
Like, I'm the one in charge.
It really like baffled me that people were thinking that way. And I think too, I'm really grateful that a big part of me was still emotionally immature. And I think that served me for a while because I was, again, newly going through my own healing journey. I was opening up a lot of childhood stuff, the way my mom had done things, which I like told myself I would never do, blah, blah, blah. And it's the same thing. Like I've even had to learn, I like to think I wouldn't have done those things. And until I go through it myself, until I wake up that morning and my husband's not there and I'm left with my kids all by myself trying to figure things out, how the heck do I know? And like learning to mature myself. I had to learn how to grow up. And the reason why I think I was emotionally immature going into creating my content, and it served me for a while, was because I was able to think more from a child's perspective. Because I had childlike emotional maturity. I was still feeling hurt by what my mom did. And I'm like looking at my son like, how could you ever be the problem? I wasn't the problem. How could you ever be the problem? And I realize like it's not a healthy place for me to stay in, being that like emotionally immature and thinking that naive. I couldn't stay there, and I woke up pretty quickly like to the noise of like, oh my gosh, you're so unrelatable. This is toxic positivity. So you're just going to gaslight yourself? Is that what you're going to do?
Oh my God.
And it just like, that stuff really woke me up and it really struck me down. And I think people they have this perspective and this perception of me like, oh, Tessa's just willing to come out there and say it guns blazing. And it's like, Lord, are you praying that over me? Because I would love for you to pray that over me. Speak that life over me.
I would love that.
I could use more courage. And the reality is like, no, that's incorrect. I went into creating content with the perspective of my kids because I still had a childlike perspective and I still had the emotional maturity of a child. And then through raising my kids, I've needed to grow up. And I've needed to be the adult for them. Like I had my chance to be a child. I had my chance to throw a tantrum when I didn't get what I wanted. Yes. And now that my son's not doing what I wanted, I've got to be the adult. Mm-hmm. It's his turn to throw the tantrum. And teaching myself how to grow up like that, coming back to your question of like, you know, what helps you step out and do it boldly is because when I started out and I was naive and I thought a lot of other people were just like going to agree with me. And I didn't think it was going to be this like revolutionary, never considered that because I'm like, this is the only thing I've considered. I don't understand that. Yes. Waking up out of it, I've been able to create a system now and understand like, okay, there's a lot of things that I believe that just don't belong on social media. And there are a lot of things that I believe that I'm excellent at teaching that do belong on social media. And I've had to put some good parameters in place that help me feel safe on social media. And then in my coaching programs, I'm able to be more open and vulnerable because, like, if you're going to pay to be a part of
people,
exactly, if you're going to pay to be a part of a program, I'm not concerned with you blowing me up.
Totally,
like, you want me to teach you this, and then that idea of relatability. I always think it's interesting when people try to use that as like a jab against someone else. Like, oh my gosh, you're so unrelatable.
Yes,
and it's like you do realize that displays what you're used to relating to. It has nothing to do with me.
Yes.
So what you're telling me is I'm so unrelatable because you're used to relating to the victim mentality and I don't.
Yes. I choose not to
and I'm
accept that anymore.
Yeah, and I'm not the problem because of that.
Yes.
And I think too, just with social media, like again, putting those parameters in place for me where it's like I use my social media to preach more and teach more about what's undeniable.
Totally.
Right? It's just you don't have to understand a bigger perspective in order to get that.
Yes.
That's really helped me with social media. And again, like it all started because I thought that's what everyone would think.
Totally. Yes.
and it actually there was this one mom, her account was blowing up. And my skin crawled seeing her content. I mean, it just crawled. And it was so interesting to me because her content was based around validating moms. Like, I'm going to validate these moms. And this is hard. And I just kept thinking, like, if you keep thinking something's hard, when does it get to be easier?
Hard. Yeah.
Like, always. When do you get better at it? When does it become easier? If it's just hard and your kids are doing X, Y, Z to you. I'm like, when do you get to do something different? If they're making you mad, how long can they keep you mad?
Yes,
like, the language didn't make sense to me. And I was already, again, going through my own stuff where it's like, that's exactly how my mom thought. And that really hurt me. Yes. And while I fully forgive my mom now, and we are really working on a relationship, we're in a much better spot, which I'm really proud of us. All of it's still true. Yes. Nothing's untrue about it. So when I saw her account, I remember her video, it was so viral. It was just being shared all over, and it said that motherhood is monotonous. And it was going about how cleaning the toilets is monotonous, and the kitchen's monotonous, and the laundry's monotonous, and the childcare is monotonous, and it's just one thing after another. There's always diapers, there's always schoolwork, homework, tantrums, all these negative things. And I looked at my husband, and I was like, I'm gonna make a video. If she can make a video saying that motherhood is monotonous, it was like my permission slip. Yeah. I can make a video saying that it's not.
I love that.
So then that was my first real mindset video. If you scroll all the way back a few years ago, my first real mindset video said, motherhood is not monotonous. Your mindset about it is. And it changed everything for me, where I was able to see like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can actually teach something here, and I can get other people to understand and feel free from this mentality that's completely drowning them in their motherhood. Yes. Their own thing that they couldn't wait to be in and experience, and they're just missing out on it because their own brain.
Totally. Dang brain.
I know, dang brain.
But they're so powerful.
They're so powerful. And they can exactly, for good too. So the social media aspect, it's like, if someone can go out there and say something to which I view as so absurd, then that's like my permission slip.
Yeah, you can be absurd to the wrong people.
Exactly.
Or maybe it'll just
I can go wave the other flag. Yes. Like, hey, have you considered this? And then again, just when I started, emotionally immature and naive.
Totally.
And that served me for a good long while.
I love that. You're like, la la la.
Exactly. This is what everyone's going to
great. Yes.
How could we ever think our kids are the problem? Yes. And I've learned a lot since then. Obviously, like, I've got 4 kids, and motherhood is full of challenges and difficulties. And again, like, perspective makes it easier.
Totally.
With the right perspective, it's always going to get easier. The wrong perspective always makes it harder.
I love that.
And I think that's pretty undeniable.
Yes, I love that. I just think, like, I mean, obviously my company is called the Live Big Collective, but to me that's like what living big really is stepping out in front, and it might seem absurd to people, but then you're not playing small to fit in with the typical or the, the normal or relatable, I don't want a relatable life. I want I want a big life. I want a full life. And that might look different than what someone else's may look like. But to me, that is you living big, 100%. That you're like, no, I am going to choose how I want motherhood to look and how empowering. And I love that you're doing that for so many other women. Mm-hmm. Like, that is like such valuable work. So
it's been truly just like doing this. I think it's like one of the biggest blessings that I never even considered being able to experience, let alone like lead and be a part of and create a space for, is how cool is it that my purpose in life is to be the best mom I could possibly be, right? Mm-hmm. And my actual job is to be the best mom I can be.
I love that.
Like, I just think it doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any better than having a huge group of women that you feel accountable to sharing tools with, and then the tantrum that you need in order to practice a tool. Yes.
And you're like, I'm figuring out a framework right now.
I know, I've got the whole setup. I've got the kids, I've got the community, I've got the supportive spouse. I mean, he's wonderful, and the belief in myself to be able to follow through on it. And I just think, like, I couldn't have dreamed of something better than for my career to literally align with being the best wife and the best mother I could be is what makes me successful.
So cool.
And I think it's really cool.
I love that. Well, and I think there's a version of, like, so many women out there think it's one or the other.
Yes.
And I love that you're bringing it together. Mm-hmm. Like, that everyone's version of that looks different. Like, it might not be a business. It might be certain hobbies, or it might be certain, like, finding things about yourself, right?
Well, you briefly said at lunch, I thought it was so good that you have write out like your top morals and values, and when you're trying your principles to live by, and then you workshop from there. Mm-hmm. And maybe when we're feeling like, oh, my career is taking away from my motherhood, maybe the problem is that we're basing a career that's outside of our principles.
Totally.
And we just need to reevaluate.
Yes.
And the motherhood's not the problem.
Yes, totally.
And you're not stuck where you're at.
You're not blaming it on anything else.
Yeah, you can make a change if you really want to. So I think that's super fitting too.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So speaking of, what would you say living big looks like for you?
Ooh, baby. Oh man, honestly, to me, like living big is truly, it's what I'm doing today. Like it's the opportunity that I have to trust who's with my 3 boys at home while I get to drive a few hours up north, meet with you, connect, have lunch with my husband and my baby in the back seat, and then drive back home tonight, know that even if my kids are awake, I'm going to be excited to see them. And I mean, honestly, living big to me is doing exactly what I'm doing. And that just feels so good. Like it's not, we were talking about this. I mean, I'm very comfortable in my home. I'm very content in my home, and we could afford a bigger home. Like we can afford to move. We have the luxury to live anywhere that we want to live because we work remote. And the reality is I want to be where I am. And that to me is like, it just doesn't get better than that.
Totally.
That's living big. And obviously, like, I want to make this exceptionally big impact, like hosting conferences for moms to come be a part of and learning from multiple different professionals and experienced mothers of what's working for them, what's helping them, and truly creating a movement in motherhood that creates like a generational desire for motherhood. Because I really believe that if little girls grow up in a home with a mom that blamed them and they didn't like motherhood and it was all the kid's fault, what are the chances that little girl wants to become a mom? And I think about that with my boys too. Like if they look at what I'm doing in my role and the way that I fill this role as something that I just find to be completely dreadful, how much effort are they going to put into thinking about their future wife is going to be the mother of their children and to create that type of life? So to me, living big is like, how many generations can I touch that are going to really want motherhood and have a complete contentment for motherhood to do it their own way? There's no rules. You get to do it your own way. And to know that they actually love the way that they do it.
Totally.
And then in the meantime, I mean, I really like to spend January in Maui with my family.
I mean, that's, can't live any bigger than that.
Yeah, really though, it honestly feels like I wake up and I attack the day. And that's living big.
Yes, yes. Well, and the thing that I love most about your approach and your mindset and everything that you do is that you can tell that you're actually living this. You are living big, And I think it gives permission to other women to be like, oh my gosh, I can do that too.
Yeah.
And to just think, it almost makes me emotional to just think of like all the mothers that you're having an impact on, because the role of mother is the heart of the home. Mm-hmm. Like you are not just affecting your own generations, but you are affecting, like, if all these women, you said you have 700 members in your app, like 700, if you could affect even the tiniest bit of 700 women, let alone your other, courses and coaching and all the things, and then they're changing some of those patterns that have happened in the past for them, and that affects generations, like, Tessa,
isn't it
cool.
that it's the, that's what blows my mind is I understand, like, I don't need everyone to agree.
Yes.
I just need the right women willing to change the conversation over coffee with their friend.
Totally.
I just need the right women that are willing to say, hey mom, I realized this. Like when they're talking to their mom, when they're talking to their mother-in-law, like understanding, your mom, my mom, that I could say, I mean, she'll admit the mistakes she's made. We could talk about it all day, and I know she did the absolute best she could. Mm-hmm. There doesn't need to be anger and aggression there. There doesn't need to be something pent up. Mm-hmm. And when I think about like that one mom in our app, for example, that's taking advantage of this coaching and really taking it to heart and making these changes, it changes the way her husband parents too.
Yes.
Right? So now we're also, I don't look at it as just motherhood, right? I look at it as the fatherhood part, like it's parenting. Yes. And personally, I'm going to live to be a great-great-grandma. Mm-hmm. So as I'm a great-great-grandma, I'm going to make the same influence on all my great-great-grandbabies that are going to be like, oh my gosh, great-great-grandma Tess. Yes. Nothing beats great-great-grandma Tess. Like, I have a vision for it. And I know, like, I don't control this part. I just feel very strongly, very certain that my grandkids are going to be a huge part of my life. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be a huge part of their kids' lives. Totally. And there's going to be something about the way I speak to them, the way I create family gatherings that keeps my whole family close together and empowers everyone involved. And I think about that all the time. Like, people just like to do what works, what they think is going to work. So until someone breaks the mold and says, this works, no one else is going to get out of the mold.
Totally.
And I've gotten so much inspiration from, our lunch together, our several hours that I had you talk to me before we even started recording, because I'm like, what about these things? I really need your insight. And really just how powerful it is to connect with other women that are thinking big.
Going through similar things.
Yes, going through similar things and thinking about it different. And how empowering would it be if every woman decided to evaluate her friendships and her influences and decided to think like, okay, is this a helpful relationship for me or a hurtful relationship for me?
Yes.
And then look at their principles and say, does this relationship make my marriage better? Yes or no?
Yes.
Does it make my motherhood better? Yes or no? Not saying you have to drop the friend. Maybe show the friend what works better.
Yes.
Try and change the conversation of coffee.
Yes.
Do something. And I think it's really cool that you and I are women that are willing to do something different. And we get to live big as a result.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I really love that. You talking about that just sparked, I wasn't planning on sharing this, but I was like, oh my gosh, this totally made me think of that. There was at one point, so I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and my mom got sick for 3 years when I was in high school. And so I did all the laundry and the cooking and the driving kids to sports and music and all this stuff. So there was a portion of my life that I was like, I already raised 5 kids. I don't,
That's how I felt about my little sisters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was like, I don't really want to be a mom. I think I was kind of like, it's just not my thing, And I remember I did hair for 10 years. I don't know if you
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I did hair and
Makes
I had
sense.
a client. Yeah. Oh, you're so nice. I had a client sit in my chair, and she was probably in her 50s, 60s kind of, and I was probably 22 or something. And I was like, oh yeah, I don't think I want to be a mom or whatever. We were talking about that, and she was like, well, how come? And I was like, well, without getting too much into it, I just don't think I'd be very good at it. It was kind of I had these high expectations for myself of what it looked like to be a mother. And I was like, well, my mom's amazing and she couldn't do it perfectly. Yeah. So that means I can't either, kind of mentality. And I remember she looked me in the eye and she was like, Andrea, your imperfections are exactly what your children will need, and that will make you a perfect mom. Not that you are showing up perfectly, but you are the perfect mom for your children. Yeah. And that shifted everything in me, because I thought, oh my gosh, I can do the things imperfectly, I can do that. Yeah. That's easy, Yeah. But all of my imperfections are still perfect for my children. And that just made me think of that one conversation, that one flip of a switch, that I was like, oh, I do want to be a mom. Yeah. And so I think there's versions of that. And I know I've experienced that even through your social media, something free that's a random reel that you're just doom scrolling. And then there's Tessa that shows up you are doing such important work that is changing just that little mindset that for me, that was a big one. But I think you're doing little ones all the time and big ones that are just oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Or oh, my child is making this decision, and guess what? I get to show up differently because Tessa, it's almost like Aunt Tess,
Aunt Tess said.
Told me that this is what I should do, And so I just think that is amazing and so needed. And I just want to encourage you to keep doing it all out and in your best, I think we're all fearful sometimes of we're gonna get canceled for this or that or whatever, but I just think your work is God's work, that
I
this
do
is
agree.
so important. So
our mission statement, I usually only share it with the team because we do serve moms that are trying to figure out their faith. It's actually really cool how many moms that came to us saying oh, I don't believe in God.
Oh, interesting.
And then they do our work, and we make no leads towards the Bible or anything like that. Yes. And we don't coach through a faith perspective in our mass group. We just coach through tools, practical implementation, and then like vision stuff.
Yes.
And it's amazing to me how many moms have said, Tessa, I started reading the Bible because of you. And Tessa, I found Jesus because of you. And they're going to church, they're taking their family, they've just like something clicked for them because of a little phrase, a little like something so simple that means so much. Like the words I get to.
Yes.
They're so simple and they change everything. Yes. And so yes, and when you say like God's work, the mission statement with our team is bringing the chosen mothers of God's children back to him through raising their words and writing their mind, because we do a lot of focus on that. And when I think of that statement, though, I'm just like, I write at the top of my page every day that I journal. I say, God's got me, so I've got this. This is his work. And then I write that at the top every single time. And I believe it with my whole heart. Like, you and I aren't here to suffer. We're not here to be the burden and obstacle to somebody else. And we're not here to be perfect either. Like, we are here to learn, experience, grow, and share, and live childlike and have exceptional faith best that we can. And what you're saying about like, I don't have to be perfect, it just reminds me that like my husband, I used to think is like so perfect. Like the dude's never made a mistake. If I'm being completely honest, there's just nothing he would go back and change. It used to really bother me because I'm someone that was like turning to drugs and alcohol and maybe slept with a couple people that like I really wish I didn't do. Like, and honestly, like I didn't have supervision as a child. I didn't have these like rules and boundaries and people to like turn to. I was constantly just trying to make it. Like I was just
survive, let alone thrive.
Yes. And in all of that, I used to think like, oh my gosh, if my kids ever found out what I did, like I'm a terrible example for them because I've made all these mistakes. And one day it just dawned on me, and this is what I love about my brain, that I really think is a gift.
I love this.
I really believe it's a gift that my brain has, is this ability to like think one way about something and then immediately flip it. Like it just does it, where I'll think like, oh, Marcus is a much better example for our boys because he hasn't done drugs. He's never had a sip of alcohol. He's only been with me. Like he's extremely he knows what he wants and he's willing to hold out for it. And it's amazing. Whereas I took a more experimental route like growing up. I used to think it's a bad thing. And then one day I was thinking how like Marcus is a better example for them, blah, blah, blah. And then I thought about how if my boys ever were presented with the temptation or they ever did choose to do one of those things, who are they going to relate to more? Me or him? Me. Yes. And I'm able to show them, look, I did those things too, and look at who I am now. Yes. Look at the decisions I make now. Like those things are things that I learned immense amounts from. I'm really grateful for. Yes. And your dad learned things through sports and boundaries and structure and tight family dynamics, which he brings great examples into our marriage for that. And I bring great examples through lived experience.
Yes. I love it.
So yes, we don't have to be perfect in business or in motherhood or in marriage. We do need to be willing to follow our gut a lot more and understand like, hey, if this doesn't feel right and it doesn't sound right, it's probably not right.
Yes.
And we should do something about that.
Yes. I love that. And how lucky are your boys to be able to have both? Like that is so cool that they're going to get both of those experiences. And like that probably empowers you to be like, no, I am going to share my journey, the whole story. Yeah. I'm going to tell the whole story when it makes sense.
Yeah, when it makes sense.
And so I think that's really cool. And to me, that's what's really relatable. Back to like the relatable side of it. It's like, let's be real and show that like we want more and we want to become better, and that stagnant is not the goal. Yeah. Like let's not just sit in that.
That's a really great way to say it. Like so many times relatability is pitched across as like, hey, I'm struggling with this too. And then we all just sit
sit in it. Yeah.
We're like, okay, this is the struggle
or something.
And it's currently parked.
Yes.
So we're making no movement. Yes. And the way I view it is like, I want to relate with women that, yes, understand the difficulties and choose to do something about them.
Totally. Like, and you're like, hey, get on this bus. We're going. We're moving. We're figuring this out together.
Exactly. And I do. And I'm grateful for those relationships and friendships. And like I said, I'm going to call you tomorrow. Yeah. So every day leading up to Sunday, I'll be calling you.
I love that.
And I think that's just a really cool part of the mentality.
That we get to connect in that in any way with other people.
And what's fascinating about that is, I mean, pretty much anyone could be friends with us.
Yeah.
Like even when we go back to this idea of like, oh my gosh, I don't have mom friends, I don't have entrepreneur friends, I don't have wife friends, homemaker friends that get it. You could.
Yes. You start it. You create it. You gather it.
You create it. Exactly. And I mean, you and I wouldn't have met if my husband didn't put himself in an event, talk to your husband, and say, I think my wife should be able to get a podcast.
I love it so much.
Sometimes you just gotta.
Thank you, Marcus.
I know, thank you. Shout out to him.
Yes.
Sometimes you just gotta be willing for it to look different, do things differently in all areas of our life.
Totally. Well, with our last few minutes here, like, is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with, or just wrap anything up, or any thoughts that you have that are on your heart?
Yeah, I feel like the thing that always comes to mind for me is you can be who you want to be no matter where you go or who you're with. And it's truly a decision. And we overcomplicate it. Just like you said, it really can be that simple. It really can be that simple. And sometimes it involves hard conversations like you were advising me on before the show. And darn it, like it feels hard for me to do too. It feels hard for me sometimes to be the leader for my team that I want to be, the wife that I want to be, supporting my husband, the mom that I want to be for my boys when they're in the throes of it and it would be easier to yell. It feels difficult, and that difficulty doesn't mean that I can't do it. It means that I'm about to get as good as Simone Biles at doing it.
Yes, I love
I'm about to be the champion
yes.
of doing it. And,
Tessa.
Simone Biles practiced and she was like out of the womb.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
I can practice today.
Yes, I can practice
But yeah,
today.
that's my last little notice. You really can be who you want to be no matter where you go or who you're with. And like you said, if that's who you choose to be, that's what you're going to choose to do, and that's what you're going to choose to have. And I can't think of a better way to live bigger than that.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I love the way your brain works, and I love following you on social media, but today I've loved hearing like the story of just like how you came to be. And I didn't know you had so many like hardships in your childhood, and I think that's what gives the fuel to like really make things happen. Like I don't know if you've heard this example, but there was like a case study of these two twin brothers, and one ended up in prison and made all these like crazy choices, and one was like CEO, really happy family, successful in all of the ways. And they were both interviewed, and they said, the interviewer was like, okay, so why do you think you ended up the way that you did? And they both had the same answer. They're like, well, my dad was an alcoholic, I had all these, A, B, and C, all these hardships. And it's just like what made them decide one and the other were the same exact circumstance. And so I think that's so cool to hear your story where you chose like, no, I'm going to rise above this. Like this doesn't define me. This isn't how I want to show up as a mom. And the example that you had seen, and you're like, I'm going to take it this way, where so easily you could have chosen the opposite or to continue that same path. So I'm just so inspired by you, and I just love that you've come to share your story, and I know that it will really help a lot of other people be like, I can do it too. I can choose the life that I want to do and live big. Right?
Yeah, so. Live big, absolutely. And it just quickly reminds me of in scripture, it talks about how the path to life often looks like death, and the path to death often looks like life. So when we talk about like you could decide to continue doing what's easy, you could decide to do what you know how to do. And if it looks like life, it's probably going to lead you to death. Yes. And then we have to give up our own ways, right? You have to set down your own ways, pick up your parts of us. Right? Pick up your cross and follow him. And just growing my faith that way, it's extremely important to me and near and dear to me. And I'm grateful that I can draw in women that maybe don't have faith yet or have questioned it, while still protecting my own faith. So just giving everybody that little bit of encouragement, like choose the path.
Yes, choose the path. It's worth it. Yes.
It's worth it. It's for the greater good. Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you, Tessa.
Thanks for having me. I drive up every day.
The best. Okay, deal. See you tomorrow.
Perfect.